All right, thank you all for being here today as we are introducing. We'll start again. Thank you all for being here today as we introduce the Campaign Integrity Package, which is a set of 9 bills. 8 of these were circulating for co-sponsorship recently, and we have a number of co-authors of those. The 9th one will be introduced shortly. But each of these bills uniquely will help move the bar closer to democracy, closer to having individuals have a say in who their elected officials are, and making sure that the public has insight into who is spending money to buy their representatives, their elected leaders, than they do right now. So each of these bills will do that. As a sum total, they end up shifting us to the place where we should be in terms of the public's expectations. I think if you ask most people in the public where they think the laws are, they think that they can find out who is spending money into super PACs. They think that there are reasonable limits. They think that coordination is illegal, as it is in 49 other states. They think that there is folks have to report at a lower limit who their employer is and their profession, and that there is that there's reasonable limits for what millionaires and billionaires can spend in elections. That's not the case, unfortunately, because of the laws that changed in the last few years. So these bills will get us back to a point where you can understand as a regular citizen what's going on. And I think this is important to making sure that we're unrigging our elections. As the current system stands, the voice of billionaires or special interest groups is more valued and more protected than that of the average voter. While this is a result of problems permeating from 2 very flawed and public U.S. Supreme Court cases, Buckley v. Vallejo and Citizens United, I would love to talk more about how we can tackle these problems in the future, but I think it's important to tackle the ones that we can here at the state level. It's essential because we've seen the increase in spending in Wisconsin. If you look at our graphs, you see the direction that things are going, that more money is being spent in legislative races, more money is being spent in the governor's race. It's not listed here, but it was well publicized, the record amount of money that was spent in the governor's race, $91 million cumulative. Unfortunately, those who are spending this money are not doing it for altruistic reasons. They have an outcome that they are looking for, not just in the candidate that they are electing or the candidates that they are electing, but the policies and the policy implications that will come out of it. In essence, they are viewing our democracy more as an auction than as a system of government. They view it as investments, and I've seen numbers come back in terms of the return on investment, where they can spend, as we see here, $12 million on legislative races and get an outcome, right, where something similar to Foxconn, where there's unrestricted funds going out, or money going out under the auspices of economic development in loans, in job credits that are setting records in terms of our state, in terms of our country. We can't allow that to continue to happen. We need to make sure that the average person's voice is heard at the same level as the billionaire, as the person who wants an outcome because of the monetary interest that they've got. That's what these bills end up doing. I'll just read quickly through the names. I believe we have the handouts. For those that are watching on WisconsinEye, we have these at our website, listed in the Larson report that came out on February 7th that was outlining all of these. But the names are the Sensible Limits Act, which limits PACs down to $10,000, PACs, legislative campaign committees, and political parties. Restoring Reasonable Limits Act, that goes from $20,000 to $10,000 for statewide candidates. The Special Interest Limitation Act. This proposal reduces by half the donation limits on political action committees contribute to candidates directly. Closing the PAC Loophole Act. This one's a little bit more complicated. What it does is it closes a loophole in the definition of what a PAC is that many groups use to bypass current donation limits. The one that we have not yet circulated but will be is the Communication Transparency Act. This makes sure that large amounts of money that are spent 48 hours before an election are disclosed so the public is aware of it. It also ensures that the names of donors to PACs and dark money groups is disclosed every 12-month period. The next one is the Coordination Control Act. This makes sure that there's the same financial limits on coordinated expenditures between candidates as there are currently in place for direct contributions. This closes the only law in the country that is like this. No Corporate Campaign Bribes Act. This amends Wisconsin state statutes to prohibit corporations, cooperative association, labor orgs, and federally recognized tribes from making contributions to segregated funds established and administered by a political party or legislative campaign committee. The next is the Contribution Sunshine Act. This restores the fact that you have to have an individual's place of employment and occupation for everybody who's donating $100 or more. That was removed a few years ago. And the last one is the Stop Unlimited Contribution Act. This proposal will limit the contributions that an individual can make to a political party or a legislative campaign committee, as well as limiting the transfer of those funds between entities. So as you can tell, each of these would have an impact in moving the dial back in the direction of the people, but sum total, they get us back to ground zero, back to sea level, so that we can actually have some election integrity. We can have some belief in not just the democracy, not just our campaigns, but the outcomes, the elected officials that come out of that process, that they will be listening to the people and not just the checkbooks of the rich and the powerful. So key in our alliance in this and integral in helping us look over this was a friend of mine, somebody who has been a leader on this issue for years in making sure that and highlighting some of the worst cases of corruption, of legalized bribery. And he is going to be speaking next. That's Matt Rothschild from the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign.
Thank you, Senator Larson, for your tremendous work on this really crucial issue. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I want to start off just by reading a Valentine's to our democracy in Wisconsin. Dear democracy in Wisconsin, won't you be my Valentine? I love you, but I'm worried about you, and I want you to get your act together. You've let the super wealthy and the big corporations take over the funding of our elections, drowning out the voices of the rest of us. Democracy, you can barely hear us now. Democracy, you're drowning in dark money. Democracy, don't let them sully your name any longer. So take this bouquet of bills from Senator Larson, and on this Valentine's Day together, let us celebrate our mutual love of clean and open government, where everyone has an equal voice. Happy Valentine's Day, democracy in Wisconsin. The Wisconsin Democracy Campaign is a member of the Money Out Voters In Coalition in Wisconsin, which also includes Blue Jean Nation, our Wisconsin Revolution, Wisconsin United to Amend, and WISPERG. The Money Out Voters In Coalition is proud to support these bills. Common Cause in Wisconsin also endorses these bills, as does Wisconsin Voices, a coalition of 63 Wisconsin progressive nonprofits. And the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin, while not having time to examine all these bills, agrees that we need much more transparency and much less money in our politics. So as you can see, there's immense support in the nonprofit sector in Wisconsin for Senator Larson's efforts, and we commend him for his leadership. We also commend Representative Sargent for her leadership on this issue in the Assembly, and we commend the other lead sponsors and co-sponsors of these bills. But let's be clear. The reason this package is so urgently needed is because the GOP leadership in 2015 made a hash out of our old campaign finance law and made it all the easier for the super wealthy and for the powerful corporations to have more say-so than ever before and with less disclosure. Robin Voss and Scott Fitzgerald drastically rewrote our campaign finance law in 2015. For instance, they let corporations for the first time in more than 100 years give directly to political parties and legislative campaign committees. And last year, corporations shelled out $1.7 million to those parties and legislative campaign committees. One of the biggest corporate donors was Altria, otherwise known as Philip Morris, which donated almost $40,000 and spread it around to both sides. Voss and Fitzgerald also made it easy, so easy for corruption to creep in. Let me illustrate this point with a hypothetical. I'm running for governor, and I've got a billionaire friend. The 2015 law said my friend could now give my campaign double what the old amount was. That old amount was $10,000, which was bad enough, but $20,000? Rich and poor alike in Wisconsin can now give $20,000 to their favorite candidate for governor. But it gets worse. The 2015 law, thanks for the applause. The 2015 law also said that my friend could give an unlimited amount of money to political parties, whereas there used to be a $10,000 limit on that. So now I tell my friend to shell out $2 million more and give it to the political party I belong to, which promptly turns around and gives that $2 million to my campaign. And the 2015 law said that I can now coordinate my campaign activities with so-called issue advocacy groups. So now I tell my billionaire friend, give another $2 million to this new group I've created with the cutesy name Badgers for Eternal Victory. And my friend obliges and gives Bev the $2 million. And I go tell Bev what ads to run and what stations to run them on. And the kicker is, Bev doesn't have to disclose that my billionaire friend gave her a simple dime. So my friend has now basically given my campaign not the $10,000 that he used to be limited to, and not the $20,000 in direct contributions that the 2015 law allowed, but in essence, $4 million in $20,000, $2 million of which we'll never know about. That's crazy. The U.S. Supreme Court, even in Citizens United, said we should limit the amount that individuals can give directly to candidates because it's so corrupting. And the Supreme Court, in Buckley versus Vallejo, another decision I wasn't crazy about, said that donations to groups you're coordinating with should be considered donations to your own campaign with specific limits on those donations. But that's not how the 2015 law that Voss and Fitzgerald rammed through created. The 2015 law is an open invitation to corruption, and the wealthy and the corporations promptly and gladly accepted that invitation. Senator Larson's bills will rescind that invitation, and not a moment too soon. So please call your senators to co-sponsor and support these urgent bills. They're crucial if we're going to have a well-functioning democracy right here in Wisconsin. Thank you very much, and I'm sure Senator Larson would be happy to answer some questions if you have them.
Any questions?
Chris, in a practical sense, what stops the current coordination that's going on in the state of Wisconsin and it's been codified under law? What about the new legislative proposals stops that, if I may ask?
Yeah, it would again place limits on the amount of money that you could give to those campaigns. So you would have reasonable limits. So you can't have these cases where you have, I know I have an example of where a candidate can ask for example, the Dick and Elizabeth Uline, right, giving a good chunk of money to Scott Walker in 2015. It was disclosed 2015, so it was the 2014 cycle. And those two, along with Diane Hendricks, donated $3.3 million. And that money was shifted over to they give it directly to the party, and then the party was able to give it directly over to him. This would again place reasonable limits directly on what a party can accept, and also the amount of money that can be transferred over.
Chris, maybe I wasn't clear, or maybe it doesn't address this. I'm more concerned, or I guess the heart of my question is more about coordination with independent groups.
Yeah.
Is there a prohibition? Do we try to end the coordination, let's say it's Scott
Yeah.
Walker in Wisconsin Club for Growth,
Yeah.
and go Giebig Taconite writes a check to Wisconsin Club for Growth,
Yeah.
and they spend it in coordination with Scott Walker's campaign. Is there a new prohibition through this legislative piece?
Yeah, that's LRB 1093, the Coordination Control Act. So that one says basically the same financial limits on coordinated expenditures between candidates and groups are currently in place for direct contributions. So you wouldn't be able to give, in that case, you wouldn't be able to give Scott Walker the limit and then turn around and then give much more to this outside group. It would be viewed as having a combined limit.
So there's an aggregate cap proposed of
Yep.
all giving that would be for the benefit of a specific candidates committee or across all candidates in a campaign cycle?
I'd have to look at the exact details of it, and I'd be happy to get it to you. But yeah, it's LRB 1093, the Coordination Control Act, but allows, which right now, there's unchecked coordinated campaign expenditures, as you outline, that circumvent those campaign limits, invites corruption, and this would end up closing that off. So yeah, I don't remember exactly what the mechanisms we put in place were,
Sure.
but we can get that over to you. It would basically restore the law to what it was and to what it is in the 49 other states.
Chris, formally or informally, do you have any Republicans that are seeking to stand with you on this fence?
What do you think?
I'm asking questions. Sir.
Yeah, no, I know. I just like to turn it around. Right now, we have a number of co-sponsors. We have about a dozen on each of these bills, and we're going to be going around again today to both Democrats and Republicans alike. Unfortunately, because where it is right now and how the rigged system unfortunately has benefited one party much more than the other, the conversations that I've had on this are short, for one, and not encouraging.
Chris, what do you think the public sentiment? How would you persuade your Republican colleagues? Is there any polling?
Yeah.
What are you guys pointing at to help them try and change hearts and minds?
Yeah. Anytime there is a referendum question on the ballot that talks about election integrity, whether that be overturning Citizens United, or whether that be in 8 states this last cycle where they actually had referendums that moved the bar closer to having the people at the table. There was one, which is the lightest one in Florida, which said that they were going to create a commission that was going to have everybody come together, look at the election laws, and change them from there and make suggestions to constitutional amendments moving forward. Or more severe in Missouri, right, where they said, we are going to do away with partisan redistricting. We're going to place limits on campaign expenditures. Missouri famously has no limits on what you can give candidates. And that passed. Both of those passed. Across the country, these things pass. In Florida, it was, I believe, 75%. And in Missouri, that one passed is 60%. And again, the same time we're at the top of the ticket, Claire McCaskill lost, the Democrat lost. So it shows that there is a bipartisan hunger. A bipartisan, I would even go further and say nonpartisan hunger. Every time a Citizens United referendum is on the ballot, whether it be in Waukesha, whether that be in Milwaukee, whether that be in any part of the country, every time that they have put this up for a question, it passes. So the question isn't whether the individual legislators are going to support it or not. The question should be whether they are going to listen to their constituents, whether they're going to listen to the public, and how soon it's going to happen that the public is starting to realize that their will is not reflected in the politicians that are in office. And this becomes the issue that they decide to start voting on. My sense is that that time is a lot sooner than folks think it is. So thank you guys.